talking about some, yo, you got smashed that. Me in 5th grade, 4th grade, you talking about smashing.
Hey everybody, welcome back to our Culture Combos. I'm Joseph. Please guys introduce yourselves.
I'm George Boateng.
I thought your name was Jorge.
Jorge, that's Mike. He don't cut his hair.
Miguel.
So yeah, we're gonna have guy chat. We're gonna talk about some of the issues that you guys have been asking questions about dealing with guys in the church and things like that. So I'll start off the questions, fellas.
Please don't let it be one that we always talk about.
Relationships?
No. We're not gonna get into
Okay,
relationships.
all right.
No
Woo!
relationship.
I bet you the segues in
This
there.
is strictly for the fellas, strictly for the guys.
All right, cool.
So some of the questions that they asked is when it comes to men in the church, what are some challenges that may be common but not talked about amongst each other? So when it comes to men in the church, what are some challenges or things that may not be talked about amongst one another? Mike, I'm gonna start with you, bro.
Okay, so let me think up top. I would say I want to go broader than just men in the church and just say men in general. Some of the things we don't talk about are what we need and what we need as men, because we don't know. A lot of times we don't know because we haven't sat down and sat with our feelings or had many people or had instruction on what we need to be a successful man, what we need to be a successful man of God. Because a lot of times we just go with the flow and just live. And even if you think of older guys, they go to church, go home, be with their family, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so the younger guys are kind of just there floating around and trying things on their own and living out on their own. And I even think about me and my brothers growing up. We literally just had to figure it out for ourselves. I mean, my mom couldn't, she was working 50,000 jobs and trying her best, but she couldn't teach us or tell us about specific things. And the older guys that were around were ratchet and talking about some, yo, you got smashed that. Me in 5th grade, 4th grade, you talking about smashing. So that's what we got. So I think that's a big thing about not knowing and not having instruction. Not being aware of the things to look out for. I mean, I guess one thing is they talked about make sure you wrap it up so you don't get somebody pregnant. But come on, like that's what I grew up on. That's all the guidance I got was wrap it up. Yeah. And even that was, to be honest with you, they gave some other options, and that ain't okay. So that's what I would say. I want to start with that.
All right, George.
Man, what could I say after what he just said? But no, honestly, I think it's dealing with submission, right? Because men, we naturally don't have a tendency to submit. And I'll give you an example. My wife, when she's in the closet praying, she'll go in and and the neighbors can hear her praying, and she can cry and she'll be like, yep, I just had a great session weeping to the Lord and all these things, and she'll come out fine. But for me, it takes me a lot. Like, I've only probably done that maybe 2 to 3 times in my entire life where I felt like I've really poured out my entire heart to the Lord, right? So, men, we genuinely don't have a heart for submission because we feel like we're autonomous. We can lead the way. And so, to your point, we figured that we don't have anybody if we don't have anybody we're submitted to, then what happens is we don't have that leadership to say, hey, listen, I did A, B, C, D, E, right? And so don't do those things or do these things. And these are the things that are going to help you. We were like, no, we're good. Like, you call a guy, how you doing, man? Yeah, man, everything's cool, man. How about you?
Yeah, right. That's right.
So
That's typical.
Yeah, unless you actually start to have like a solid relationship with somebody, they're like, hey, brother, I'm really hurting. We don't really have that. So everybody's trying to figure out the same things, but what happens is we should, there's a quote that says, stand on the shoulders of giants, which basically means that people who have gone before you, who have done something in the right way, you don't need to go ahead and reinvent the wheel. You stand on their shoulders. You can see better. You have a better vantage point. So I think it's in just that leadership and accountability and submission to a man who is, somebody who's further along spiritually than you are. That really just gets to set the stage for, what we're talking about.
That's probably like number one.
Yeah.
Number one completely, like us submitting, because we look at submission as a weak thing, or we look at it as it's just not natural for us to do. Women will naturally submit. They were made after man. Man was made first, so we think we got it kind of together.
Yeah.
And so it takes a little extra for us to come under somebody. Even I remember years ago, I wouldn't even commit to a church. Men out here not committed to churches because we don't want to submit, and we don't know that's it. I have a good friend who we all do, and I hope you're watching this. For like 5 years, every year I'm like, have you joined the church? Have you joined the church? Yo, they got new members classes online. Still hasn't.
Yeah.
And it comes down to a submission issue because I was church hopping. I was like, oh, this church got this. Oh, they don't have that. But it came down to it of like, I got to just choose because I need to choose and the Lord will guide me, but I got to step and make a decision. But the root of it was I don't want to be under somebody. I don't want to fast when they tell me to fast. I don't want to pray when they tell me, when they say we're doing corporate prayer, or I don't want to like have any, I don't want to have to do a ministry. That's all it comes down to. And I think that's huge. When we learn to come under and pray for the right person to be over us, we have so much access to their covering, their wisdom, and the instruction that we need from another man.
Yeah, and I think one thing, I definitely agree with both you guys, and I think the one thing that the church also misses out on sometimes too is just mental health. Like I know we had talked about it earlier, but I think that the mental health in the church for guys is real. Especially you have 3 black guys, 3 African American guys out here, and therapy for black men is like necessity, just because of life in general. And I think that one of the things that we deal with, or maybe even not deal with, is mental health. And there's things that we struggle with, I think, sometimes that most people don't realize or recognize. And I think that it plays a huge part in our growth as men, our growth as husbands, and things like that happen later on in life. And I think that that's a big part that people don't see or just miss out on in general. Yeah. So speaking of those things, let's jump into what do we feel like, how can we overcome them? I know we talked about submission. I know we talked about guidance and stuff like that. Like, what do we need to do as men in the church? Because we are now the next generation. And, if we recognize it, it's now our due diligence to make a difference and change it. So what do you think we need to do to overcome these things, to change the next for the next generation?
Yeah, I think it starts with acknowledgement. I didn't know that I had a submission issue until people around me told me. My family told me, until I started to just see patterns, and then I had to, take it to the Lord. And I don't even know if I said help me submit, but I realized that I needed covering by older man, and I was trying to get it from different places, and I didn't know that. But I think I got to a place where when I first accepted it, it took like heartbreak. Like, freshman year of college, girlfriend broke my heart, and I was crying to my stepdad. I'm sorry for what I did for y'all 2 years ago. I was like breaking down, and that moment of trauma, or that moment of like heartbreak, which was my first ever heartbreak for real, took me to such a low place that I was apologizing for stuff that I did years ago to my stepdad, and that ain't had nothing to do with the dang on relationship, like my heartbreak. But it took that from to realize that to apologize and to come under, and from there it skyrocketed. And then I also just started to that opened the door for him to pour into me. And then from there, I started asking the Lord, like, "Hey, can you send older guys? I need an older man to reach out to." And now I have a few that I can reach out to. That growing up, I never really had anybody, and I have like uncles, but they're not. I mean, they're there. I mean, they're not there. They're there at family reunions. Yeah. But they're not gonna come to take me under their wing. But it took that being broken. And then that was like a window. So when we have those moments, and I think a lot of time we have those moments, but we don't step through the window or step through the door, that it's like, all right, this is the moment where you can actually realize you need submission, and you can flow with it, or you can just try to fill it with something else. And sometimes we'll try to fill it with something else. But when you have those moments, to take that opportunity and to flow and allow that realization to come, and then pray for it. Like I said, I prayed, and now I have a few older guys I can talk to, and I make myself reach out to them. Like, they're not the best at, and this is just the reality. I think the generation over us isn't the best at reaching down.
Yeah.
They just don't know how to, or they just, I mean, they got a lot going on. I don't know. It just is what it is. But are we going to sit here and complain about, oh, I don't have nobody reaching out to me? Or are you going to say, I need to reach out up because I need something?
That's good. Yeah.
So I make sure I reach out to my stepdad when I'm like, look, I need you to cover me in this area. Like, even if I don't even be wanting to do it because I'm so self-sufficient, or I think I'm self-sufficient, I'm like, I need to make sure my stepdad is aware of this. Or I have my friends that I reach out to whenever I need anything. I'm like, look, can you cover me in this area? Or I need your advice on this. So I make myself do it.
That's
and
good.
then I'm obedient when, especially if I have a dream or something and the Lord's revealing me something, I try to be obedient and be like, all right, let me just tell the man over me about this. Because naturally I would just be like, oh, I'll just figure it myself. It ain't no big deal.
I think that's really good. The reaching out part I think is huge. The pride, man, once you gotta get over that pride of being a man and just like, okay, listen, I know I struggle. Let me figure it out. Like, there's so many guys who have gone through the same situations, and that's the terrible part. Like, your dad went through it, your grandfather went through it, or even guys in the church that have gone through situations, and they're not sharing the knowledge to the next generation. And it's like, dang, like, help us out. Like, we got to go through the same things you went through. You went through this emotional state, or this state of wanting to have it all together, knowing that you don't. And then, but you don't tell that to your children, or even, it doesn't have to be your children. It could just be other young guys in the church. Like, we're bad at being open and vulnerable with one another, and also just sharing the knowledge, the things that we've gone through with the next generation, so that they can be like, oh, okay, you know what? It's actually okay that my emotional well-being is not like where it's supposed to be, or it's actually okay for me to feel sad or feel a certain way and not be labeled as like, oh, you a little punk, get it together. Like, because I felt like that for like my whole life. Like, listen, there's no sadness. Like, we mean, listen, if it's whatever you're dealing with, we're gonna get it.
What it is.
Yeah, like, listen, brush it off. Let's go. Like, this is, you're not here to be sad. Like, this is that the emotions are for the women and the guys. Like, you know, you're supposed to be here, and whatever emotions you have, brush it off, do what you need to do, and keep going. And I think that that's what's taught. And I think that it's a problem because there are emotions there, there are feelings there are things that we deal with and battle with on a regular basis that we need help with, that we need people to realize, okay, you know what, I'm struggling with this. And somebody can be like, you know what, yeah, actually, I struggled with depression when I was your age. And it always feels good to be like, okay, you know what, if he struggled with it and he's now successful with the family and everything else, it's like, okay, I can get through this, and they can help you get through it. So I think that one of the parts of overcoming it is for men to not just like you were like the guy, our generation, we have to reach up, but it's also like you said, they're not good at reaching down, but that's what they need to do. And as we grow into the next generation, we need to start reaching down as well to the guys who are younger than us, and the guys who are in their 20s and they're going through the same things that we've gone through. It's like, okay, we need to reach down and let them know, hey, listen, it's all right to be vulnerable. It's okay to have feelings. It's okay to be, you know, go through these things because it's part of life. And I think the more we do that, because women have so many platforms, man. They have groups that get together all the time. They get together and talk.
They share
everything. And guys out here like reaching, like there's nothing. There are very few platforms where guys can be like, okay, let's get together as fellas and talk about the struggles that guys go through, whether it's like I said, depression, pornography, whatever we face. We need to be together. Like, I know that before they mentioned healing is in community, and I think that that's what we lack. We lack that community. But that's part of overcoming it. I think that's a practical step we can take to overcome it, is to build community, a community of guys that can talk, be open with one another, share with one another
And
experiences.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
probe and ask questions.
Absolutely.
Because we don't ask specific questions.
Yes.
We'll say, how are you? And we find that that's it.
Right.
Or we need to be like, all right, so what's up with work? Or how
Yep.
did that happen? What's up with your relationship? Did you do this? Did you do
Yep.
that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, we got to be specific, like strategic, because we know how we are.
Yeah.
Unless you ask us the direct
We're not gonna
question,
say it.
we're not gonna. And sometimes we might not say it because we're just not thinking. I don't be thinking about stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm learning to be in touch with my feelings, but I don't naturally be like, oh, I'm feeling it, unless somebody helps me, like probes me and asks me questions. So we might not be the best at that, but we need to start doing that. I don't care if we need to Google questions that ask each other and
That's
just
real.
text, hey, how is the
Yeah, man. On that same note, I definitely agree. Community and even back to that whole submission thing, right? So I think it's important for us to find at least one or two guys that we actually trust, and those guys that somebody said, listen, if you're on your highest high, you just won the biggest awards, they can tell you, hey, sit down and be quiet, and you don't say, okay, I'll sit down and be quiet, right? We naturally, our tendency is not to want something like that, because why would you? Right? You don't want anybody lording over you, right? But it just teaches us to have that humility. And in that, we're able to grasp so much wisdom. Like where now, this person can actually probe into our life. Hey, not like, how are you doing or what's going on with you, but when's the last time you watched pornography? When's the last time you raised your voice to your wife? How about you talk to your parents? Have you been doing, what about the things that, like, the actual meat and potatoes versus, the fluff, like, how are you doing, and, how's work going, and things that, you have those conversations with everybody, right? So you need to give somebody that authority to dig and to get deep, because that's the only way that real change happens. Like, okay, if I know I can do this thing, and I'm not going to get away with it, and, I have to answer to this person, right? And sometimes we know that we have that same relationship with God, but sometimes since we don't have that, we don't see him physically, sometimes we forget. But if you know that you have to answer to this person who is, an authority figure in your life, and they give you wisdom, then you're more cognizant of that. And you're like, okay, I'm going to make sure that I'm doing what I actually need to do, because I got to report to somebody. And that person can give you wisdom and things that you might not have known. Like, for instance, in my family, my uncle came out maybe like about a year or so ago. He had I think he's like an elder or pastor in the church, but he basically was telling his life story, and there were so many things that he's dealt with that I had no idea. And the whole time I've known him to be a very pious man, right? So I didn't.
He said pious. Oh, what?
SAT means prayerful.
Prayerful
Christian type. But anyway, the whole time I've known him to be like this man of, like, faith. But I didn't know that he had certain struggles that I've dealt with, that my brothers dealt with, that my dad has dealt with. And then, like, now, and seeing that, I'm like, wow. I wish I would have just had conversations with him. He could have probably steered me away from certain things if I had done that preemptively. So I think that's good.
Y'all convicted me. I got nephews. I need to sit down and have a conversation.
Right.
And just bring up topics.
Yeah.
Talk
Yeah.
to them and hear what they have to say about it. Dang it.
Yeah.
I think we all do. I think that definitely,